Okay, it's 5:01. We have a quorum. I'm calling the regular board meeting of the Ross Valley Sanitary District for May 18th, 2022 in session. May I have a roll call, please, Julia?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
That would be me.
Gaffney,
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Megs is currently absent. Scylla.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I will lead the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any reason why we'd want to move anything around, Steve, on the agenda tonight?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then can I call for a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second.
Okay, and a roll call on that, please, Julia?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Megs is absent. Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3 is open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters within the district's jurisdiction but not on the posted agenda may do so. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The board may not take action on or discuss items not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements or questions made by a member of the public. The board president may refer any matter to staff for further follow-up or like to have the matter placed on an agenda in the future. I want to read that, but seeing no public, I'll give a moment, but no public there. So I'm going to move on to committees report out. Tom, do you want to do finance?
Yeah, I'll do finance. Doug and I met yesterday, and I'm pretty sure Pamela and Michael listened in. And so we, everybody can understand a lot of things. We reviewed the financial statements and really had no comments at all. They look very fine, in good financial condition. There's no doubt about that. And then we did review a work order for a CEQA by Integral Consulting. I thought she might be here tonight, but we did get a presentation, a short one from her. And then we spent a lot of time on the draft fiscal year budget, which is quite a document and really well done. And I'm sure the board will want to discuss that in a lot of detail. Anything else, Doug?
No, I think that's right. We'll obviously discuss the budget ourselves tonight, so I don't think we need to go over what we went over. So with that, Central Marin Sanitation, Michael, do you want me to do it or do you want to do it?
I'll start. You can fill in the blanks.
All right.
Basically, nothing happened. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, a whole ton. And the main important thing was we had a Carollo did a very large presentation to us about the possibility of doing direct potable reuse at CMSA in the future. We take about 11 million gallons a day and we treat it and throw it out into the bay. A little bit of it goes to secondary recycled water, which the RVSD uses, and some contractors come and get it and use it to keep down dust at construction sites. Because it's not clean to the tertiary level, it's not able to be used for watering lawns or any of the other stuff. So it's got very, very limited usage, although we are using it. And we went and several months ago, we had a presentation which I told you about going to do tertiary cleaning. But it turned out to be way expensive and probably, given our infrastructure, would not be used probably at all, or hardly, not much more than it's being used now, because we don't have a purple pipes infrastructure, and our infrastructure is so old that it would be difficult to implement that. So we looked at the possibility of doing a direct potable reuse feasibility, and CMSA paid for half that study. And basically,
You mean MMWD?
that's what I said. What did I say?
CMSA.
Oh, well, MMWD paid for half of it. And as I said, CMSA paid for the other half of it. So I was half right. But basically they came back and it is totally doable. In a nutshell, take about 2.5 acres of our land that we have currently over there, where we currently have parked Marin Transit Association buses, but they never plan to stay there forever. And it will take about, in a nutshell, 10 years to build such a plant. There were 2 versions that they suggested. One was 2 million gallons, and the other one was 4 million gallons per day. And basically, it makes more sense dollar-wise to do the 4 million for MGD than it does to do the 2 MGD. And the really lovely thing about it is, and we would be the first in California. There is one other in the United States, in Texas, that's doing strictly DPR, direct potable reuse, where it's going straight into the pipes. The other ones, like Gavin Newsom was announcing yesterday in Southern California, is indirect potable reuse. It's being pumped into lakes or into the ground, as other places in the United States. And that's also good, but it's not the same as DPR. We could produce 4 million gallons a day of absolutely the finest quality drinking water that money can buy. And the beauty of doing that is right next door to us on each side of the property is 12-inch MMWD pipes. So we can pump it straight back into MMWD pipes. There will certainly be some PR in making that happen because nobody likes the idea in particular. But it really is H2O to the finest quality it can possibly be. And by pumping it directly into the pipes, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but right now we pull the same amount a day out of the Russian River, approximately. So it would really make us more independent because they could, Sonoma Water could really cut us off at any time. And although our reservoirs are in good shape right now, they might not be into the future. We don't know what the drought is going to do. The cost of doing such a thing is $110 million, give or take a few. It take about 10 years, 10 to 11 years to do it. Probably 4 years for design and permit. 4 years for just getting the permit to do it, 4 years to design it, which means that the technology is only going to improve between now and then. Then we would have to build a demonstration unit, which is part of the whole PR thing, because people would be then able to come down and fill their water jugs and see that, oh my goodness, this is really amazing water. We have to put minerals back into it. It's that clean. And convince the public that this is a good thing to do. There was some reaction that perhaps we need to move it somewhere else and distribute it from there, so as not only that part of Santa Fe would be receiving that water, it wouldn't, because the water moves in both directions. But that was a concern, and that's something to be determined in the future and to be discussed about. My personal opinion is it's really the finest water. Several years ago, Jason brought some of that water from Southern California to a CMSA meeting. And I said, oh, look at this. This is great. And just went ahead and drank it. And Jason looked at me and said, you're not supposed to drink that. But it tasted fine to me, and I'm still here. So I'm just very excited by doing this. I think it's a wave of the future. I know, Steve with his One Water ideas, we have to be thinking like this. We have no idea what the climate is going to do into the future. So I was very excited by that. What do you think, Doug?
Well, I think the cost is going to be $122,357,000 to build it.
That's
And
close.
$5,433,000 a year to operate it. It would cost $2,700 an acre foot, which is more in line. The tertiary water we talked about last time would have been $10,000 an acre foot, which makes no sense. So the project would have to be run by MMWD. No sanitation agency in the country is allowed to produce clean water. Only water districts can do that. So it would be built, I was suggesting thinking about putting it under the highway onto the Pelican Way property of MMWD. But Steve pointed out, and I think other people pointed out, that moving water costs as much money as producing water. And so it would be on the CMSA plant. It would be a large property, and it would be run by MMWD, or at least supervised by. So, and who would pay for it? Well, probably MMWD would. So
Yep.
that would be the other thing. So that was that. Anything else? Or do you have any board members have questions on that?
I on Central Marin, maybe it's if Pamela wanted to talk about that. Did you, Pamela?
I'm just curious, is this a recap of CMSA or a board item?
CMSA. We're just talking about CMSA.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
On a little bit different matter, I went to the Central Marin Finance Committee meeting today, and just to report, they do a 2-year budget, which is pretty slick. We might think about that. And then they do mid-year adjustments, and so there were a number of adjustments to make. But as an update, the plan for us to pay for Central Marin is that they increase their revenues from our members 3.5% a year, and that's good for 5 years, and I think it's this year and one more. And then they're going to negotiate their wages with the union, I think, and come up with another 5-year plan, and that'll dovetail right in with we follow them the year after. And we're hoping that we can continue the 3.5% revenue adjustment, because their costs are going up mainly for chemicals and salary. That's the plan. That's my plan at the Finance Committee.
The cost of chemicals are insane. I think that there's some items that went up 94%, 90.4, the sodium hypochloride. Ferric chloride went up 68.1%. So the chemicals are really killing us over there.
Yeah, in fact, I was a fly on the wall today at the facilities meeting at CMSA, and they did discuss that, and Tom could mention that that's actually the big unknown right now, because of supply chain, whether the prices will increase or whether things will actually stabilize and get a little bit better. And it's just a big unknown at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Jason said they potentially could go down, but they haven't been going down in years. And I don't have the original total was probably $1.5 million, and they had to adjust the budget by $325,000 up.
Chemicals is 10% of the CMSA budget, I believe.
Okay. And so it went up another 3% for chemicals, the entire budget.
That's about it. Okay. North Bay Watershed, Pam? You're on mute.
No speakers, but they had a recap on expenses for the year and kind of a general overview. And they have a budget, I think, of about $500,000, and their expenses were $89,000. Kind of recap some of the comments they got from the conference. People are just so amazed. They're so happy. So that was a really nice, incredible feedback to get that. Thank you.
Okay. Steve, verbal report.
Yes, thank you, President Kelly. Just a couple things to update the board on this evening. At 1111 Anderson, The construction beginning date has been postponed till June 27th to accommodate some changes that came about at the request of Comcast, the tenant. And interestingly, in the existing lease, if the tenant requests any changes, that renders all the deadlines for completing construction as void pretty much because they've initiated the change. So this, by delaying construction to accommodate a change proposed by the tenant, doesn't put the district in any additional risk of having to, forego rent payments or that sort of thing. So, and then what's behind that, as some board members here know, but just to report out to everybody, the current state, Comcast approached us after we signed the contract with the contractor to do the remodeling project for the interior. They approached us afterwards saying that their return to work day that they had planned, post-pandemic, they learned that there was not a demand for office space from their workers that they had assumed, and which actually drove the requests for tenant improvements. So they approached us with the question of whether we could use the downstairs area and they could reduce their rent proportionally. And that triggered a process where we reviewed how we might be able to make use of the front area. And as the board members would recall, when we first purchased the building 3 years ago in April 2019, there were some hopes expressed that that lower floor would make a good board meeting room with enhanced public access. And so we've spent time, gathered staff input. The facilities committee met briefly yesterday to see some of the proposed changes. And in essence, that we would move the assembly room from the second floor down to the first floor. And we would move the public counter from the second floor down to the first floor and have appurtenances that would support those uses, including one restroom by the elevator. So we are in the process of finalizing designs on that to give to the city of San Rafael, because this will require a change in the permit with the city of San Rafael. And that's why we can't jump right into construction immediately. But it's our understanding that the contractor is open to this delay. They've got a lot of work they're doing already, so they may have, it works probably from their standpoint to begin at the end of June, beginning of July in any event. So that's a real quick update. There are other small changes. There's less construction will be necessary on the second floor for the internal conference rooms, because there's a domino effect where we can now take advantage of the existing conference rooms that we were going to convert into the board meeting room on the second floor. So there will be less construction expense on the second floor, and maybe incrementally more on the first floor. And we're not sure of the cost impacts, but based on our input from our construction manager, his feeling was it was going to be fairly cost neutral. But there may be slight increase in costs. That remains to be figured out.
Hey, Steve, Comcast should have asked us if their employees wanted to use that office space, because I could tell there was never anybody there the whole time.
Yep.
What were they thinking?
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, it appears favorable for some of the board's original goals for the building, and we'll continue to keep you updated. But it appears to be a favorable turn of events.
Yeah, I like having the public meeting room on the first floor. People just come in and there you are. You don't need them upstairs. There's backup bathrooms upstairs. So I think if you had a lot of people, you might sometimes want to allow them to use the upstairs bathrooms, but I think that's just fine. Anything else, Steve?
Yeah, thank you. I did attend an annual meeting a couple of weeks ago on the Friday with BACWA, which is the Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, of which we're a member. And it was the first in-person annual meeting since the pandemic. And so it was good to reconnect with folks in person. And it's like, oh, you're taller than I remember. Or you're, and then Lori Infono, who's the head of BACWA, said, it's great to have everybody here. And I'm glad you were able to put on your pants today and come to the meeting. It was a good time. So they covered a lot of good subjects. The regulators from the EPA, Bay Area Air Quality Management, Regional Water Board, State Water Board were there. There's hot topics include the PFAS, which are the perfluorinated compounds, like the Teflon-like compounds that are showing up in some drinking water supplies. And it's being carefully studied from an effluent standpoint. It doesn't really affect us so much as a collection system agency. There was some talk about the sanitary sewer order that I've briefed you on recently, and the interactions with the state board, which are going well. And then there's an issue around nutrients that you may have been indirectly following. It affects our CMSA treatment plant and its discharge requirements. Looking ahead is the trends of nutrients that are accumulating in the San Francisco Bay that aren't showing up as major algal blooms yet, right? There's some dynamic parameters out there, and there's some concern that things could get worse with the high level of loading. So it continues to be a heavily studied issue that BACWA's tracking. I did ask about permitting delays from Air Quality Management District, and hopefully that will help them see that sewer agencies probably should be at the front of the line, because the answer I got was, well, there's more generators that are asking to be permitted these days, but as we know, we have a public health mandate for our generators compared to a lot of private company generators that aren't. There's not so much at stake. So I saw an opening there to help influence their policy on who gets priority. So maybe BACWA will help with that. And then finally, I should report my last item is that I did attend a second Marin Municipal Water District Board hearing. This was their full board on May 3rd. They had a hearing on Ordinance 461. Which proposed to take some of the drought conservation measures and make it a handful of them permanent, even in non-drought conditions, just to, I guess, maintain a certain level of performance of water conservation in their service area. And, examples include, never washing sidewalks with water, for instance, those kind of things. And never having a fountain that's a one-way, single use, go to the sewer or storm drain or whatever they would. I've never really heard of those, but uncirculating fountains. So those kind of things that are non-essential uses of water. But they had grouped sewer cleaning and sewer flushing in non-essential uses in what was going before the board. So we actually, I worked with Andrea's colleague, Melissa Thorm, to remind their board of the essential nature of the sewer cleaning, but also that in our service area to mandate recycled water use would mandate trucking, because we don't have a distribution system, as Board Member Borstein mentioned earlier, and that there's an environmental impact of trucking recycled water to do sewer cleaning that was not disclosed in their action, which they claimed exemption from CEQA, which is a disclosure of environmental impact. So we did bring that forward, but brought alternative language. It basically came down to change the word shall to should, to be simple, but it makes a huge difference because it gives us and other sanitary districts the option of not using recycled water where it doesn't make sense, or where there's potential impacts and significant productivity impacts. And so we were successful and got the change, recognizing it was not a non-essential use, as well as making it an option that sanitary districts can choose to do their level of recycling to what makes sense in their service area. So it was an important effort. I was supported by a couple of other sanitary districts at the hearing. including Bill Hansel of Alto Sanitary District and Bonner Bueller of Homestead Valley Sanitary. And it was really helpful to not just be the lone voice on this. And I was grateful to Melissa Thorne for her assistance. And that's all I have. But yeah, so the bottom line is we continue to do what we think makes sense and continue to track our recycled water use, which is a performance indicator that we're proud of and we'll continue to track. And that's all for my report.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to just say that our general manager was pretty darn awesome at that meeting. I was able to get on and watch it and listen to it. And he really told it like it is. And I know that they listened. So it was great.
Okay, verbal reports by board members and requests for future agenda items. Michael? Nothing. Mary? Nothing. Pam? Nothing. Tom? Nothing from myself either. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. Matters listed under this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. The consent calendar may include resolutions. Therefore, the motion, second, and vote will also be applicable to the resolutions and recorded accordingly. There'll be no separate discussions of these items unless requested by a board member or the public prior to the time the board votes on the motion to adopt. Again, seeing no public, does anybody wish to pull anything on the consent calendar?
I have a question.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to pull anything. This
Go
is
ahead.
about the remote teleconference. We're talking about Zoom, right?
Well, we don't use Zoom.
And actually, we do. Now,
We do?
Yeah, we do now. Where you been?
Okay, we do.
C, letter C. Are we going to go to hybrid?
Well, I guess I'll start. That's really up to the board. If you want to continue to have the ability for board members to participate remotely, we need to continue to do these resolutions every 30 days. Julia is helping me keep an eye on how other agencies are managing this going forward as the COVID numbers go up and down. And I thought a couple months ago that with the numbers being so far down, maybe we couldn't justify in Marin County this resolution, but many other agencies continue to rely upon it. So I'm no longer concerned about that. Whether the board wants to move forward in a hybrid way is up to the board and also up to whether there is space and technology that would support it.
Okay. Yeah, the numbers are up 383 infections. I think it was yesterday. So it's way up. Okay, just curious. There are agencies doing a lot of the hybrids thing. So, all right, thank you.
I did notice that I attended silently the CMSA Finance Committee today, and Eli attended via Zoom. So it was a hybrid. He called in, and Tom and Dean and Jason were all there, and I was a fly on the wall. But it was a hybrid, and it seemed to work very well.
I'd like this board to continue to do the ability to have people call in remotely. I think it's a great public service for people in the future if we start going back into real meetings who just want to remote in and give a comment and they don't have to get up and leave their house and drive over. I think it's a great public service. So I'd like to continue to do it that way indefinitely, even if we meet in person. I don't think it'd be that hard to arrange, but that's not what's on the agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second,
Thank you, Pam. And Michael, can we have a roll call, please, Julia?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Ma'am.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meigs,
yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to number 8, consideration of accepting the district's draft fiscal year 22-23 budget, number 8. Is that Steve or Felicia or?
I'll kick us off and then we'll hear from Felicia and Corey. I'll just remind the board that our standard process is to bring a draft budget to you in May. and encourage your comments and suggestions and feedback. And then we will incorporate those comments, suggestions, and feedback into a final proposed budget in June. And so we'd like to take our time because there's a lot of information in here, but we benefit from continuity of your leadership. So you're familiar with this last few years of budgets and the characteristics of them and things to look for. So we look forward to a efficient, effective process. But I wanted to point out a couple highlights that I think really benefited from having Corey Spray join us as our finance supervisor and anticipate several items in this draft budget that will lay the groundwork for this district to qualify for a budget leadership award. Is that the right word, Felicia? Yeah. And what's that? Sorry.
DFOA, Distinguished Budget Award.
Distinguished Budget Award. That was the word I was grasping for. Thank you. And so there are several elements, including performance indicators and just an overall arrangement of the document. And so you'll see it's a little bit more robust, and I'm hoping easier for you to get through and understand and read. And I'll let Felicia and Corey touch on a couple of other additions. But generally, we feel that we're in good shape. The last time we did a revenue bond issue to catch up and meet our expenses relative to what our revenues were, that was 3 years ago. That was July of 2019. And since that time, I believe, this budget really shows how we've caught up. We've built up the reserves, and we have a plan based on the IAMP that you helped fund to do risk-based long-term capital planning. And there was good news that we didn't have any super high-risk assets that required a lot of capital outlay in the near term. And so we've now positioned ourselves 3 years later to truly be a pay-as-you-go organization for our operating and capital expenses. And so this is, and you see this with the 5-year forecasts and how our debt ratio is continuing to improve as that maps out. So those are some high-level indicators, look really good. We're fortunate that we seem to have caught up with a lot of the low-hanging fruit and important capital investments, but there's still plenty to do, which we can get into the details of further on during this meeting. So with that, I want to hand it over to Felicia to highlight some of the elements of this year's draft budget. And of course, Corey can provide some details as well. Felicia?
You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
All right, how about now?
That's better.
Good, thank you. On there. So I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Corey, who made the recommendation to change the format of this year's budget to meet the criteria for the GFOA Distinguished Budget Award. This is a much more robust budget than the board has seen in the past, and that is in really significant part to Corey's innovation about formatting it so that, we don't think this year will apply for the award, but next year, after we've gone through one budget cycle, we do think we have a good chance of receiving this award now that we've adopted this new format. So we hope that the board, appreciates all of the hard work that went into it. I certainly do, and want to again, just thank Corey for bringing this forward to the district. Some of the things that you'll notice are key performance metrics that have been incorporated into the financial budget document. The board's very familiar with these metrics. They're included in the monthly metrics report and the annual metrics report. Corey again, put a lot of work into taking those key metrics and incorporating them into the financial budget, which is one of the criteria that is required in order for us to be eligible for the GFOA Distinguished Budget Award. So that is certainly a change, but I think a very good one. And we did receive positive comments back from the Finance Committee, and we're looking forward to hearing from the full board tonight on that change. The other thing that I'll bring up is how much work that the capital improvement project entails every year, and the general manager deserves a lot of credit for working that up, not just the current, the coming fiscal year budget, but the 5-year forecast, working with our operations team very closely to identify areas that intense maintenance, areas of past SSOs, and targeting those for capital improvement projects, which makes our entire system that much stronger. So thank you, Steve, for the work that you put into doing the capital program budget, and also to Corey for working with our engineering department to pull all those numbers together. I know that's a Herculean task. Also, our operations and maintenance manager, Paul Bremer, jumped right into the budget process and gave us a lot of great ideas for where we can make critical investments in our fleet and other areas of our operation. So you can, see it really is a team effort, and the Finance Committee and the board now have an opportunity to make your contributions. We've made some, we collected some comments from the Finance Committee. We'll definitely incorporate those. One of the things that we talked about at the Finance Committee, and I'm really excited to bring to the board tonight, is in this budget document, we're proposing to make a very significant contribution to our pension liability, actually to pay down our unfunded liability for pension. As you know, the board adopted a SEPT, Section 115 trust a couple of years ago. We think that this is a really great place to put the money that we've had actually been saving up quite a bit over the last couple of years. We had vacancies in our staffing, so we have significant salary savings. We also had significant capital improvement program savings. There was a particular example that I brought up at the Finance Committee. I'll bring it up here again. The Butterfield Arroyo Kenrick project originally was budgeted in fiscal year 1920 of over $4 million, $4.5 million, I think it was. And it came to, actually, when we issued the notice of inviting bids, we awarded that contract for $2.7 million. So there's been savings over the last few years, over the last few budget cycles. And this we saw as an opportunity after our presentation from Ira Summer last month from GovInvest, that it would be very beneficial for us to go ahead and take those savings, recommend to the board to put a $7 million contribution directly into SEPT and pay down our unfunded pension liability. So I know this is something that we, is just new to the full board in the concept. So we're very interested in hearing what your thoughts are and available to answer questions about that, that particular recommendation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Corey if you'd like to make any additional comments. And then, of course, we're looking forward to hearing from the board. Thank you.
Well, the only thing I'll have to say is pretty much that this budget really is a group effort. Like neither me, Steve, or Felicia individually could really pull it off. I mean, we had to work together for this, especially in determining, okay, what are our efficient uses of our funds, and allocating that to areas where we can actually utilize for future investment purposes, such as the pension pay down that we're proposing. So that it really is a culmination of all of our group efforts. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Corey.
We did, it just occurred to me, one of the things we brainstormed with Paul, and based on some feedback from our field staff, was maybe looking at some example easements in the service area. And, I'll incorporate this into the business plan for the coming year as well. but a new phase in easement management where we put aside some funds for really the health and safety of our workforce, dealing with steep hillsides overgrown with vegetation. And we've already begun meeting with the fire departments that are in our area to see if there's some synergy with vegetation management, fire prevention, and access to sewer maintenance. And that's promising. We're learning about what the incentives are out there for landowners to invest in vegetation control within 100 feet, even 200 feet of buildings. And the fire department appreciated that we can get onto sites that they cannot, just by virtue of having the access to these easements in the backyards on at least an annual basis. So we're learning from them, they're learning from us, and we have some funds proposed in the budget to help pay for vegetation clearing or even fixing up access trails that make things safer for carrying heavy hose equipment into these easements in the hillsides. And part of the vegetation control is actually poison oak control. We don't want our workers to be getting poison oak at work. And so that's one element that we're interested in doing a better job of managing. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'll let the rest of the board talk about their views on the Section 115 trust donation. But Mary, do you have any comments, or do you want me to ask Tom to go first?
Sorry. Yes, I always like Tom to go first when we're talking about financial stuff, but I will say this is a beautiful document. I knew its readability was better than in previous years, but I didn't quite recognize that it was a whole new structure. I've always liked the fonts and the colors, but really this is like, it doesn't read like a financial document, and coming from me, that is a compliment. So I get it. I get that there's a whole lot more effort that had to go into this, even if, it is still just the budget. One of the things I really appreciated is being able to see budget to actual for the fiscal year that we're leaving right next to the budget for this coming year, and it's clear you have your eyes on all the knobs that are turning and what was, possibly misestimated before. So super comprehensive. Yes, and probably nothing more than that to say. And I'm sure Tom caught some tiny little things. And always, I assume Doug is preface the paying down of the pension stuff. As always, we want to try to pay down our pension liabilities. So, yeah. So with that, that's broad brushstrokes of what I liked about it. I just found it really accessible. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Tom?
Well, I had a field day yesterday going over this and making my comments, but not only is it readable, but it's really chock full of great information, including our performance, items, which I think we've developed with our monthly, metrics report. And if you read that, by the way, that's a next item. It's terrific explanation of what we're doing. So we're getting now so much more information now in a usable manner. So not only is it readable, and lots of performance metrics, but our finances are in great shape. And so it's, I don't know if the board remembers, but I always was saying that we want to be a pay-as-you-go district. We don't want to be issuing debt. And $100 million later of debt later, we've finally gotten ourselves to a pay-as-you-go mode. And in a really good way, it's in the order of $10 million a year. And so, we were talking to Steve yesterday, and our district is flip-flopped for most in that we have all these small pipes, and most districts have, I think Steve can tell me on this, but like 80% of pipes are over 8 inches and over, and only 20% are below. Well, we're something like 70% below an 8-inch, which would cause maintenance problems. But anyway, we're funding our capital. In my previous life, I would tell public agencies, you gotta fund the operation and maintenance to a standard level. You gotta make the capital improvements on a pay-as-you-go basis. That's the best. And you gotta do preventative maintenance repairs. And so that's the kind of thing we're funding here. And I think Corey kind of led the way with, hey, let's upgrade this. Anyway, that's my point. And I really like the idea of paying down the unfunded liability. I was surprised to see that we could pay down so much, but it was basically funded from savings, as we've explained. And it puts us in a good position, because then we fund that, and then we use the fund to make the payments of the unfunded liability part of our, on an annual basis. So if you look somewhere in here in all the numbers, you'll see that we start with 7, but it goes down over the years. And so it's, in essence, we're pre-funding the unfunded liability payments. And so, and then we had the question of what happens, we've talked about this before. We could overfund our pension, and we don't want to do that, because if we make this payment to the SEP, it has to be used for pension purposes. Well, it's sized to be the unfunded liability portion, but we can also use it for the other, the basic pension payments that we will continue to make. So we've got a safeguard in that. And that's, I don't need to go in anymore. I had a whole bunch of comments, and some of them were wrong and some of them were right, but it was quite useful to go over it. So I don't think I need to say any more, Doug.
Thanks, Tom. Pam.
I want to go last.
Michael.
Well, I agree with Mary that when a budget report is enjoyable to read, that's amazing to me, because I get hives when I look at rows of numbers. And this was easy to read, like what Tom was saying, and everything was defined, and it was, this is really terrific. I wonder if Corey has been able to see his family, because he hasn't been with us very long. And so I suspect he's been spending a lot of time with this. But this was really fun to read. I'm excited about doing the unfunded liability in advance, because I don't think a lot of districts have been able to accomplish that. And I also like the fact that this will, I believe, allow us to slowly start increasing our capital reserves, because we have a system that's 120 years old. And like Tom was saying, it's a lot of very small pipes. And, we hope that with all of our maintenance doing and taking care of all the hot items first with our cameras, we're getting them. But at any minute, this old system, a big piece of it could blow. And if we have the ability with our reserves to say, hey, we can take care of that, let's go. One call to a contractor on an emergency and get it done. And that's exciting. And I think we're in the best place we've been probably ever, but at least in the 8 years I've been here. So it's really terrific. Thank you.
All right. So I think it was absolutely fantastic. Tom and I had minor notes, more Tom than me. For example, on page 8, the district service area population, I think we're going to add it up on the bottom. So I have totals. It's kind of minor. Tom also had some other points. I wanted to point out the graph on page 20, where our percentage flow went from 50.9 to as low as 45.9, showing that the work we're doing out in the field is having significant results. Of course, when we drop our percentage flow, as we've discussed before, that means our payments to CMSA go down, and even more joyous, the payments to the other two organizations go up. So it's a lot of fun. And this document is really a testament to just so much of the good work the employees are doing, highlighted by our financial team. But also this shows what's going out on the field and going on all over the district to really get our job done well in an efficient manner. Our credit rating went up. I think it'll go up again if we agree to pre-fund the pension liability, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I'm 100% in favor of that. And if we accept that, because of course we're just accepting this draft budget, if we pass this budget next month, Steve, I hope you'll have a press release ready to go to highlight that fact, because that's quite an accomplishment. And I think this entire financial team and this board should be awfully proud of that. And I think the employees should be very pleased with it too, because it gives them certainty. So it's an important thing to do. And do we know again, Steve, by pre-funding, how much we'll save in the long run?
That's a good question. Felicia may have that, but it's something we can ask GovInvest to clarify. Do you have that, Felicia?
I believe Corey did run some preliminary numbers. Corey, are you prepared to?
Yes. So by my estimate, about $4.5 million will be allocating out from using our future sewer service charges. We can use towards other areas of the entity. And that, keep in mind, that's kind of a lower number. So it could be higher.
I'd like to get as an accurate a number as we can, get an estimate. So if GovInvest has a better idea, I'd like to ask them that, because Steve, I'm serious about a press release, and I think that should be part of it. Pam, you're up.
Yeah, Corey, I'd like to know over what period of time on that money too are you talking about, the 4 million?
Oh, that's next 5 years.
5 years. Okay. Well, I'm going to be, thank you for the report. It is professional. It is clear. I really appreciate that because it makes me feel like I can trust the process more. And I think the public feels it's more transparent when it's really professionally done. So thank you. So I always have to be different, but I guess what I'm going to throw out there, sorry, Doug, but I kind of was wondering if some of the money, because the ratepayers got pretty much shocked over our last, 5 years? And times are hard. As you know, inflation, gas, everything is going to continue to go up. Is there any possibility of some of that money, let me just air out what I want to say, could possibly go to help the rates not go up? I don't know how much. I don't know if it warrants it, but I wanted to just throw that out there because I want the ratepayers, they see a big chunk of money and go, oh, we're just going to, immediately send it off. I always come back to the ratepayer. The second thing is, I know that our grant program, lateral grant, is still thriving. We are giving out $1,500 in the past. I think we almost doubled that. And I found out, Steve told me today that a usual grant is $15,000.
No, it's actually $1,500, but the usual cost of a project's $15,000.
Right, $15,000, right. And I'm wondering if our lateral grant program could get some of the money. And then last, I questioned our emergency fund is $2 million. If we had a bomb drop, I don't think $2 million would last very long. So those are my questions. They're just questions. So there you have it.
On the emergency reserve, real quick, actually, Corey did recommend that we start pacing that up a little bit with cost of living. So I think there's a table. What was that? It shows, it's the summary table. I think it's one of the first ones. Yeah, the budget overview. It's on page 30, which is board packet, page 72. This is a nice readable table for the overview of the budget. And on lines 14, 15, and 16 are the reserves. And you'll see if you go to line 15, emergency reserves, we've been carrying this $2 million, as board member Meigs noted. And we have had it all these years. We're actually starting to treat it a little differently and looking at kind of a cost of living style increase. And next year, we're proposing it to be increased to 2.145 million, right? Corey, is that accurately stated or?
That's mostly accurate. It's in our own policy. Our policy stipulates that the emergency reserve is to increase, be a minimum of either $2 million or be 10% of our operating expenditures.
There you go. There you go. So we've reached that threshold, in other words, where the percent of the operating expenditures exceeds the $2 million number. Very interesting. Yeah, so then it's going to track with more or less cost of living. So it's indirect. But yeah, we've reached that threshold. So it's a good point. I think also historically, I think it's important to remember that this district hasn't had capital reserves. We had a goal.
I know, I was there. It had zero.
Yeah, there were goals stated, but even as I mentioned earlier, we borrowed, we did the last revenue bond. We didn't have a capital reserve then. It's only really come into being in the last couple of years, thanks to having some good fortune on bids. We've been sort of, things have bounced our way. We haven't had the low bids be much above engineer estimate and usually below engineer estimate, which is usually the basis of our budgeting. So, that kind of dynamic adds up. And as Felicia noted earlier, we have the vacancies. So you don't have, the salary and benefits that we otherwise budget for. But this is a one-time savings. I just want to clarify, it's opportunistic that what Corey and Felicia have brought before you with this pension liability strategy. We don't expect there to be this kind of money available to do this in the future. We do expect to keep up with the burn rate needed to build the capital projects and address these small sewers throughout our system in a systematic way. So this is opportunistic at this time that we have these reserves, we have some cash available. And not only have we been fortunate on bids, but also with the capital program, there just have been delays, like on the $1.6 million pump station project. We've hardly billed anything on that, even though it was budgeted for this year because of the supply chain issues and the generators. And so these all, and then even the 1111 Anderson remodel has had some delays relative to what we had planned. So all these things have added up for this opportunity to be before us. And while on the paper, we talked about this at Finance Committee, on paper, it still will look at it as a liability, but then the SEPT will be an asset that cancels out the liability. So I don't know if that gets in the press release or on the website, but you will have that peace of mind knowing it will be funded. Go ahead, Director Gaffney.
Well, Pamela made 3 points actually, and I think they're kind of valid. One is maybe we look at our grant program, and it's a big help to us. I think these lateral repairs, they're probably the leakiest part of our system. So maybe next we're going to come up with a budget cycle, I guess, in about a year. We look at adding money onto that grant program. That's one. Two, our rates. And we discussed this even at Finance Committee. I'm looking forward to having much lower rate increases in the future. I think it's folly to not have rate increase at all because our costs go up. And then the next year you have to catch up, and nobody remembers you did a 0 rate increase. They remember, well, you doubled up this year. But I do believe that given our situation, we should be well below 4%. That's what I'm hoping. And so we'll see about that. And there was one other point. Oh yeah, the emergency reserves. That is going up. I think that's a good idea. Corey caught the fact that it's got to be 10% of our operating, and I kind of forgot that. But that is for when a sewer blows out on a Sunday afternoon, and we got to get anybody we can get in there powering it out, and so that's what that money is for, and that protects everybody, including the others. In terms of our, when we did our rate study last time, we really didn't get very many people there. We got a few. I did a calculation personally, and of the utilities that I have, electrical, gas, cable TV, sewer is number 7 out of 9. It's the 7th lowest. The only ones that are lower are a home phone line, which most people don't even have anymore, and garbage. Everything else is higher. So, and we're kind of in the mid-range of sewers. So I think, anyway, that's what I'm looking for in the future is hopefully our next round of rate increases might be as much as, around half of what they have been. I don't know. We'll find out later, but they should be lower. So, I think I kind of agree with all 3 points.
Mary.
Aren't we doing as well as we can with it? Isn't the lateral grant program like underutilized? I mean, we can only put so much money into it. We need people to come. Are you saying raise how much we give in grants per application?
Yeah, let's consider it.
Okay.
Remember we start out at 2,500 and it's now 1,500. I think.
Yeah, we actually have these high INI basins that are identified as part of our flow monitoring work. And anyone in a high INI basin can receive $2,500. So there are some $2,500 grants that go out. But just to be clear, because it is confusing, as Director Meggs pointed out, the average cost of a full repair upper and lower lateral is $15,000. And so the 1,500 grant amount is roughly 10% offset. And from a policy standpoint, I believe the board's in good standing with that level of public investment into private property to get a public benefit of infiltration and inflow reduction. And also, root intrusion and possible SSOs from a plumber sending it down, et cetera, risk to the system, right? By having these laterals, and which, you mentioned, Director Kelly, that, staff's hard work in all the different departments in this agency. It's true. There's our administrative staff working with the inspectors, ensuring the integrity of the laterals that are connected to our system when we have home sales, remodels, and this is easily 1/3 of the benefit that you're seeing in reduced flows to CMSA. This commitment to laterals and enforcing the ordinance, or implementing the ordinance and complementing it with grants and loans to encourage compliance with the ordinance. It's really working. I count about 28 or more miles of laterals in the last 10 years. That's well over 10% of the system. That gets us into territory, 15, 20% of every lateral in the system touched by this ordinance. So
my point was just, I never understood that I mean, certainly we can fund more laterals if we think we should and need to in order to incentivize compliance, but I thought we were doing pretty well. And I mean, the other thing about funding the pension liabilities, the whole idea is prior to sort of us waking up to the pension liability issue in California, public entities were saying, you know, all we're keeping on our budget is how much we're paying you today, but we're promising you all this money down the road that the future ratepayers are going to have to pay you. So we're trying to reconcile. So from my perspective, an increase in rates today so that we're not passing on the pension liability to the ratepayers of tomorrow makes sense, because it's a much smaller rate increase today. So, you know, like everything, there's a trade-off, but it's just, in my mind, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and let me thank you for reminding me of your original point, which I actually, Felicia, you may be able to weigh in and have this more at the tip of your head, but you're right. You know, we've budgeted higher amounts for the grant program, but have not spent it, you know, because there's only, demand is controlled by property, you know, property transactions, remodeling frequency, you know, these are the triggers that get us involved with requiring lateral changes. Is that right, Felicia? So we've set the 400,000 at really what we're, you know, the demand seems to be. Is that right?
Yes, you're exactly correct, Steve. And the triggers to replace or repair your lateral are exactly what you said: property transfer or remodels over $75,000 or the addition of a bathroom. And so with that volume, I think we've hit a little bit of a sweet spot in allocating $400,000 annually grant funds. We did, if the board remembers, increase the amount available for loans, for lateral loans. At one point, I forget the maximum loan amount was something like, you know, $5,000, but we've increased that with the board's approval to $20,000 because we found that people who really needed the loan needed it for much more complex and expensive lateral replacement costs. So that's been very well received. Again, the people who really need that do take advantage of, you know, a $20,000 loan. And similarly with the grants, I think we have, like I said, found a sweet spot in volume and use.
We a few years back, not only increased the grants in high INI areas to 2,500, but we also increased grants to 2,500 for ratepayers in the vicinity of a paving project. And so we, you know, when City of Larkspur or County of Marin, you know, has a paving project going on, we proactively reach out to all the ratepayers along those alignments and remind them that they qualify for this grant. And, you know, you can get your lateral done before the pavement goes in, and here's a little extra incentive. And plus, you know, you get a certificate of compliance for 20 years in case you need to remodel or sell. And that's been fairly successful. I see these clusters of approvals that are, you know, centered around, remember the big Sir Francis Drake project? Last couple of summers, you know, we got a lot of laterals upgraded through that effort. And that little bump in the grant amount might push some people over the edge that might not have otherwise taken advantage of the opportunity.
There's all sorts of different needs, but of course, many of these laterals are getting replaced upon the sale of a house. And I want to point out that with the rising cost of real estate, you know, people are making a lot of money out of their homes. They're making a lot of profit. And this is not, you know, if you're making $300,000 on the sale of your house, then the $20,000 lateral replacements, you know, not really that harmful to you. So that's one point. I wanted to make the point that, Steve, I asked you to, and you know, we have another month to look at possibly also pre-funding the OPEB, because that's such a smaller nut for us. I'd rather do them both. I'm fully supporting putting the money in and making sure that we have the pensions fully funded. I want to get this monkey off our back. I want to be the district that handled it. And yeah, we may have to carefully discuss this with the public, because, you know, they may say, you know, why do you have so much money? But in the long run, we're saving money, millions of dollars by doing this. So it's a responsible thing to do. It's the right thing to do. This is not a something light. This is a commitment that the district owes to its employees. They knew that when they got hired, and that's not going to go away. So by pre-funding it when we have an opportunity to do so and saving millions of dollars at the same time, we are being a very, very responsible board. I would like to, as Tom mentioned, look forward on our, I think we reopen, we do the next budget in 2 years. Is that right, Tom? Steve, the next tax rate increase in 2 years?
Yes, about this, around February of 2024, we'll be getting the rate study well underway.
And at that point,
next 5 years, yes.
I'd like to keep it lower. But again, it's not fiscally responsible to not raise the rates. Because when you do that, then you have to make catch up, But again, by that time, we may have disposed of some unused property and we may have a different view. I think if we dispose of some property and we have an opportunity to give some relief to our ratepayers, we certainly should. Let's look at that at that time. But paying off the pension now, fully funding it, would be, I think, just fantastic for this district. Do I have any other comments from board members?
This is one weird little thing. I saw San Francisco Theological Seminary on page 9, but I know that they've actually been incorporated into the University of Redlands, so I imagine they are not actually a separate employment entity. I could be wrong, but I looked it up on the web while we were talking. I don't know what the University of Redlands is, but I saw that somewhere, that this is now the Marin County campus.
Thank you, Director Priscilla. Got it.
Just for the persnickety.
Yep, no, very good catch. Appreciate all of those comments. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the Marin, it's no longer Marin General Hospital.
No.
We got that one.
Okay. All right. Well, do I have a motion to accept the draft budget?
Move that we accept the draft fiscal year 2023 budget and provide direction to staff in preparation of the final budget to be presented in the June board meeting.
Second.
Okay, Julia, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meggs,
Abstain.
Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Movement carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Number 9, informational items, the monthly operations and metrics, maintenance metrics report for April. Steve?
Yeah, there was one SSO this month. It was only 1 gallon, and it was near a clean out on private property. We spent some time investigating it because if there's a defect in the lateral, including the lateral connection, then it's not a public SSO. If the defect in the lateral or connection to the main is the reason for the spill. So we had to spend some time on this and look in the history, look at some video, and even looked into our inspection records a little. And I had to come to the conclusion that it was a public SSO because it had been there and we hadn't quite resolved the issue, even though we were aware of it as an agency. But we're on it. We're going to repair that area. It might even already be repaired as of this point, or it's soon to be in terms of work that we're going to get done. Very minor. And it's interesting, in the future, the WDR that the state board is considering, there's a good chance that nothing under 50 gallons will have to be reported to the database, except as a table at the end of the year. So because it recognizes this really isn't a public health or water quality threat when you spill 1 gallon of wastewater out of a clean out on somebody's yard, it's really very minor. So, but it still counts, and we still report it in good faith. And we learned something from this. And, Paul's working with me on some ways that we can flag issues a little bit better and communicate between our crews so that we address things before they cause an SSO. So, we're glass half full. What is our behavior of the week this week? Choose positivity over negativity. So we choose positivity here. And it's very minor. So, and with that, I want to, give the floor to Paul too, just to highlight anything, Paul, you feel, Paul's responded to my direction to provide a little more detail in the narrative up front. So you get a little more detail on what our crews work on, because it's pretty incredible, the diversity and abundance of work that we do. So, Paul, do you have anything you want to highlight to the board, what we worked on here in April?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. Hopefully you guys have all had a chance to look through it.
Oh, yeah.
The recent projects we've been working on, including Pump Station 12. We're working on the phonoionization odor scrubber unit over there. We replaced the light bank. This is one of the newer scrubber units that we have in the system. It uses UV light to actually sterilize the foul air and whatnot being released. And we've been operating it just under 4 years without a light change. So it's been really effective and cost effective. One of these units is actually going to be installed in Pump Station 14 with this big project right now. And this alleviates the media change out and whatnot from some of the carbon odor scrubbers that we have, which can be pretty costly. And you guys have seen some of the budgets for the odor scrubbers. I think we have 40,000 this year alone for media to change out. So it's a big savings. Another good find was we actually found a lost node on one of the hiking paths, one of the walking paths on Force Main 33. This valve was actually right in a homeowner's driveway, and we were getting intermediate odor complaints from this resident. So come to find out that it was venting right next to their garage. So staff were able to rehabilitate the site, take out the ARV, and we added all new stainless steel parts so that we can vent manually and therefore remedy any odor complaints from the residents just intermediately in between when we're just not servicing it. A little over to line maintenance crew. Steve was mentioning earlier with the recycled water and whatnot. If you look at the chart on page 10, we're an 11% increase using the recycled water this year, up from last year. Total of 550,000 gallons in tracking. So hopefully we'll get up there a couple more gallons this year. So it just shows that the crews are doing really well and utilizing the resources we have. The staff worked to outfit a couple of the ramjet flushers with some newly procured CCTV units. These are handheld units that they can push into the lines to do pre and post cleaning to make sure they're getting effective cleaning in the lines, follow up on grease and whatnot, just kind of find the source of the lateral. So it's really effective. And one of our staff members, Daryl Prescold, he actually fabricated supports and locking mechanisms to be able to keep them on the trucks, which is really nice. Able to do a little work in-house. The repair crew's been working a lot, the Estelle Avenue area, finding some issues after a paving. We don't know if it was from the pressure of the paving or whatnot, but they've been correcting a couple issues out there. And in one instance, they found a large void with two laterals connected, and we're able to clear that up, doing a 2-point repair connection.
Yeah, Estelle's over in Murray Park area.
Yeah, one of our newer areas. We did the final inspection of the Larkspur paving project, and staff being thorough as they did, they discovered a manhole at the intersection of Ward and Magnolia had a big restriction at the mouth of the upstream manhole, and were really observant, removed the debris and hopefully mitigating the possible. They did mitigate a possible SSO, so that was really good. I want to give some kudos to the staff for that, for being thorough and checking and really looking over these projects after contractors have been in the area. Condition assessment, TVO2, our newer TV truck was retrofitted through the authorized dealer for some ergonomic upgrades to help the staff out a little bit. It's easing the use of the laptop. There's a new storage solution for the push cam, so they don't have to really use their back. They're able to just step up and step into the carrier, the rack, which is really nice for them. Helps assist with less staff injuries, back pain. The condition assessment staff also went and visited Las Galinas. They went over there to go one of Las Galinas' small VACCON units that that's incorporated in the budget this year, to check out the use and talk to their staff to see what kind of issues they've had, to make sure we make the right selection on our combo unit for this coming year. There are some differences between the manufacturers, so we're able to go over there and take some time to really research what we're going to be purchasing for the agency and make sure we make the best choice there. And then there was another lamp hole that the CCTV crews, which was actually an open connection in a creek bed over on Skylon Way. They were able to notify the homeowner through our easement access packages, through our information packages, and deliver some door hangers and whatnot. So that was really nice. We're starting to try to utilize those a lot more for talking with homeowners and making sure that we're able to put the information out there and they can reach us in case of questions as well. So yeah, on 4 Skylon Way, they were able to close an open node, which was a good case for I&I. And I think that's the general highlight reel there for you. If you guys have any questions, feel free.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, it's just another month in the life.
I want to know what kind of vermin. The report talks about vermin. Do you know what kind of vermin? Are you talking about rats?
Yeah, the rats will get in there and cause havoc every now and then, I think.
You know, I lived at 4 Skyland Way for 15 years and we never had any vermin.
Maybe
Well,
cats and a big dog or something.
That was your lamp hole?
Yeah, what is a lamp hole?
It's about the most worthless piece of infrastructure imaginable. Oh, no. Well, it's all it is just a pipe that has, you can see if the water's flowing in the sewer. It's too small to be able to use for any kind of maintenance.
Oh.
So it's just a lamp hole because you can shine a lamp in and see if the water's flowing or not. I'm not a fan.
And that current one was actually in a creek bed, only about probably 3 feet above water flow, probably at eye level. So it was a good catch.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting yesterday. I was out and back of what used to be Colonial Liquors, is now Z's Deli. And there's a manhole right behind the property, but between the access to it and the manhole, there's a big fence. So you can't actually get there from where the truck backs up. And I was interested that they got to send a guy all the way down to Stadium Way and come around the other side and start fishing. Anyway, just saying it's not easy all the time to have access to those holes and get that stuff done. And it's just so important. And I saw the guys there and doing it. And so I was interested to see that, putting stuff underneath the fence.
Yeah, it can be tough. We're really working on this easement initiative to help gain access for the staff, not only for safety, but just homeowner coordination as well. You know, nobody wants to see a strange guy throwing hose over his fence and running through his yard.
Without a little notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent report.
Yep, really good. Thanks, Paul. Okay, and with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and tell you that the next regular meeting will be June 5th, 2022 at 5 p.m. via Zoom.
June 15th.
Hey,
Thank you, everyone.
Night.
good night.
Night all.